But bring yourselves up a couple of rows, come on up. That would really be helpful to what we're trying to get done here, and it allows for people who come late to get a seat behind you. So we are excited about today because one of the things that we are all being touched with is all types of cyber crime and cyber security and all these other things. When you look, how many in this room actually, how many in the room have ever got like a spam call on their mobile phone? That's like everybody, right? It's like, you know, even the DA's office gets that kind of stuff. So, hello, all right. So I'm already being cyber crimed right now, trying to turn my mic off. So I just want to make it clear that what we're going to be talking about today throughout the day, what am I throughout the day? I mean, for the next hour and a half or so, we're going to talk about how this impacts all of us. We're going to particularly talk about businesses, whether you have a salon or you have a restaurant or you have a borough president office, all of it can be attacked. And we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're also going to even talk a little bit about on the individual level. For someone who's done some hacking in my own career, it's so easy to get to people's computers. And you'd be surprised when you're not protecting your computer how vulnerable you become. I wasn't an evil, guy, but but it definitely is an important topic, and we've got the best minds in this room right now to talk about it. In addition, we're streaming this particular tech meetup, and I want to take my hat off to Jolie in the back there, who works with the ISOC, who's putting it up on their site as well as we stream it through Silicon Harlem. So it's a wonderful thing for those of you who have people who wanted to be here who couldn't be here. You can certainly let them know it's being streamed if you can get a signal down here in the basement. We are going to move very quickly because we have a very large panel. That's how many people are thinking about cybersecurity. Is like, this is going to be the biggest panel that we've had all day, because there are people here who are willing to share their insights to help us protect ourselves. To that point, I also want to thank the Greater Harlem Chamber and particularly the Harlem Week Inc. folks who have allowed us to have this tech meetup in collaboration, which we've done for the past 4 years. And every year we have a different topic, but we've been lucky enough to get the DA's office here for the second time of those 4 years. So there's a real focus, I think, within this community to make sure that we're well protected, and it's nice to have the DA's office on our side. Let me move this very quickly because we have one of the great representatives here of Manhattan who has like 29 events to do in like 6 hours. And we're gonna make sure that we get her in and out of here because I know the crazy schedule that she keeps, but she knows that she's one of my favorite people. She hates when I talk about her, but it's one of my favorite things. And I gotta tell you, if you ever do get a chance, and probably all of you already have, but when you get a chance to talk with Gail Brewer, it's the typical New Yorker, right? Keep it real. She is no joke. She doesn't, she doesn't mince any words. She's very straightforward, and that's why we love her. We don't have to play any kind of bullshit. She's really, really dead on, and she's put her own life, if you will, into this city, and particularly into this borough. And I am forever grateful because I feel like I always call her one of the co-founders of Silicon Harlem. We've been talking about technology for years and years, even way before Silicon Harlem. Her and Bruce go way back to like 1919 or something like that. So we're so honored whenever. It was a surprise to me that she had the time to come here today. So I am forever grateful whenever I can have Gail Brewer in the same room with me. So if you don't mind, put your hands together for our honorable President, Gail Brewer.
Thank you, Clayton Banks. I could go on and on about you too, and Bruce. I'm going to right now. So I really am honored to be here, and I have to say, I always tell people that my favorite activity in life is going to a civic hackathon. Some people like plays. I like plays and movies, but the fact that technology is making people's lives better, and that's what Silicon Harlem does, is really, really important. So it is an honor to be here, and I just want to talk, I'm not the best informed on cyber, but I am informed on civic. And so I'm just going to talk to you for a few minutes about some of the things that I know that are going on, and I think they play a role in the overall issue of being safe. First of all, I want to thank Silicon Harlem because you may not know this, but just for instance, recently I went to Family Day. I go to every friggin' Family Day. There's no Family Day that I miss. And the one that you may not know that at every Nature Development there is a Family Day, and they're very special and they're very hospitable, and a lot of work goes into them. But at St. Nicholas Development, where Mr. Ball is the president of the TA, there's a huge thanks to, I think, Athena Moore for our office, knowing there's a large computer facility, and it is, in the past, been underutilized, and of course, it always needs upgrading. But this amazing group, Silicon Harlem, has been working with the young people at St. Nick, we're figuring out how that computer lab can be best utilized to teach coding or other kinds of support. That's what we're all about. Finding the resources and figuring out how people can help each other. That's number one. Number two, of course, is thanks to the Greater Harlem Chamber, the seniors have a day. And in the past, they didn't have the opportunity to learn about technology. But again, Silicon Harlem has made that one of their priorities because the seniors want as much as anybody to be able to understand what this revolution is all about. And it's very, very important, and really quickly, early on with their collaboration, Silicon Harlem picked that up, and I really appreciate that. They've also been something of a major influence on Columbia, Rutgers, CCNY, NYU, other colleges, but particularly Rutgers and Columbia and CCNY, putting together a federal grant so competitive. I thought LA was going to get it. Salt Lake City and New York got it. And this grant, you can hear more from Silicon Harlem, was partly received. It is to figure out, it's basically a lab at Columbia and at Rutgers to figure out, does 5G work? Is there a situation in which urban America can participate in fast, inexpensive, quality connections, taking care of all the cyber issues that you'll hear about today, but generally it's an experiment, it's a pilot. And we're working with the schools. So far, my understanding, having just met with Sharon the other day, is that the no's are going up. They haven't actually done any experiments yet, but it's because of Silicon Harlem. This is a huge grant with many, many people as stakeholders in Harlem. And it's much thanks to Silicon Harlem that it came here. Another example of, look at the span that Silicon Harlem is playing in this community. They're also going to be doing a TEDx, which of course will bring together other minds thinking about civic tech and ways that the technology can help people. And I want to thank them for giving me this amazing opportunity to go to Harlem, H-A-A-R-L-E-M. Harlem here, Silicon Harlem says, Gail, you want to come to a civic hackathon competition with people from the Netherlands? I said, sure. And I show up, competition takes place, a couple of years, and then I was going to the Netherlands to speak about technology, and guess, I was right next to H-A-A-R-L-E-M. So the mayor of Harlem invited me to spend a week there, and then of course he comes every year to Silicon Harlem. And we actually had lunch for all of them, or dinner, I think, at Sylvia's recently. This is a special organization. So you're going to hear today about all the amazing ways that we can fight this challenge in terms of security, cybersecurity, but this is an organization that in a very short span has made a difference big time, and a wide range, and I've only talked about some of them, all the job work that Bruce and Clayton are doing and their colleagues with young people. That's another whole aspect of this program. So I'm just here to say thank you for being so innovative. Very quickly, this issue, there's so many complicated issues that are going on in terms of how do we figure out civic tech and technology in general. I want to thank the mayor's office. You'll hear from them later. But in our office, in the borough president's office, we're mostly focusing on the open data. And the issue of that, again, plays a role, I'm sure you'll hear, because data has to be secure. But in our cases, we've managed to take the bill that I passed in the city council and try to make it available to people in the community. Because yes, academics, real estate, techies can figure out how to use it, but how do you get it used locally? So we've got every 4 years now, we've had a 4-year program with Beta NYC, and we are working with CUNY students, sometimes 12 per year, wonderful students who understand that this is a career they want to go into, and they are taking this data, which is not easy to unravel so that it can be understood by the civics, the Black associations, and the community boards. And for instance, recently we are huge database on the churches, synagogues, and temples, every imam, priest, rabbi, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but they just love to sell their building to the highest developer and make money, and then put the church, synagogue, temple on the first floor. That makes me crazy, because I want to keep the building, figure out a way to make sure the parishioners and the mission is ongoing, but not have a condo where there was a beautiful building. Not so easy to do. If it's landmarked, that's one thing, but many of these faith-based are not landmarked. So we're working to put together all of this data for the borough of Manhattan, but particularly in Harlem. That's an example of what you can do with this data. And then you have to take it and do something with it. But then you know, in this particular area, which is a mid to high zoning, it's very vulnerable for these institutions, because you look at the data and you can see where they are. So that's an example. Another one is all the boundaries. We have police, sanitation, community board, school board, youth board, I could go on, bid board, all of these different boundaries. I can give you every single one in my head in the borough of Manhattan, but I'm not normal. So you need to have somebody who's not 311 be able to tell you these boundaries and if they change and so on. That's another example how you can use that data so people in the community know what is where, because people are very confused. The list goes on. Open data analytics is what we're teaching the students who then go out and teach in the community. I finally just want to mention something. Last night I went to Life Sciences. It is a program sponsored to the credit of the Economic Development Corporation of the City of New York. They take 30 students, this is the second year, from 5 boroughs, very diverse, stipends for the summer, placed in a company. And those young people have now developed, whether they are a PhD at CCNY in biology, or somebody who is at Columbia, NYU, or Brooklyn Tech, anywhere, that then learns the background for getting into life sciences. And I think those of you who are here today know this is a really upcoming field. We've got all of the universities, we've got all the talent here. We need to be #1 in life sciences, and that means curing diabetes, curing cancer, curing what I care about. We need to eat healthier, and the list goes on. So this is an example of the city, I think, taking what we have in terms of workforce and giving them the opportunity to be part of this revolution. So these are good things that are all happening. Census is coming up. I know it's a boring topic, but boy, is technology going to play a role. And boy, do we have to deal with the question, which is not going to be on the survey, but everybody thinks it is. And boy, do we have to figure out how we use technology, not just to fill out the form, but how to communicate that this is okay to do. And again, that's up to you. It's all of us to figure it out, because if we don't fill out those forms, we're going to lose at least 1 and maybe 2 congressional seats. And you know what that means, a huge loss in dollars for the state of New York for food stamps and WIC and Title I, and the list goes on. So I want to bring that up as a topic that April 1st, 2020 is the deadline. We cannot forget that as something that is a goal, to use technology now and then to figure out how we make sure everybody is counted. And the final thing was just schools. I mentioned a little bit in terms of the Columbia and Rutgers possibilities. But there are two things that happened that are good this year. One is finally, the State Department of Education, it took us 5 years, has agreed that if you're a teacher, you don't have to teach out of license. You can teach in computer science. Until this year, September of 2019, you had to teach in biology or physics or English or something else in order to teach computer science. And finally now you can be a computer science teacher. That makes a big difference. And the other thing that's happened is there was something called Directive 10, which is in the controller's office and OMB, and it basically said you can't buy any students anything but the cart with some computers in it. You can't get them a laptop, you can't get them an iPad, you can't get them a Chrome. That changed. So as of September 2019, city money can buy the same darn item that the charter school kids have, that the private school kids have, which is something that is much more usable and has better information, particularly for the kids who are disabled, who need the Chromes. So these are some of the good things that are happening, but it is slow. It is very slow. And it's frustrating for me as somebody who wants to be sure that the people of the city of New York use technology in a way that makes their lives better. So I just want to say thank you. We're all working on small businesses. I know this is more of a tech small business. We did pass in the city council just last week the vacancy data bill. And this is of interest to you. Every single store in 90 days is going to have to tell every single owner of every single commercial, first and second floor, is going to have to tell us if they have a vacancy. I can't tell you the drama in getting this friggin' bill passed. But the mayor will either sign it or not, but it'll become law at the end of August. And he will sign it or he won't sign it, but if he doesn't sign it, it becomes law. Don't get into me with his non-signing. I won't get into all that. But it will be law because he has agreed that he likes it. And within 90 days, every owner will give us the data of every vacancy in the city of New York. That'll help us with the challenge I have of so many vacant storefronts and what are you going to do with them? And then we'll know this is a real issue, because I'm tired of stating it's an issue and nobody believes me. So it's another example of how data can be used by all of you to figure out what you want to do with it and what we need to do it for the people of the city of New York. Thank you very much. Thank you, Athena Moore, who's also here from my office. And thank you, Clayton and Bruce, for being who you are. Thank you very much.
If you didn't see in your seat or whatever, check out this August update from Brewer's office. A lot of what she said is in it, but there's more. And I hope you can stay for just a couple of seconds, Gail, because a couple of things I want to announce that I think is important to. Doesn't it feel like Gail Brewer is like, you know, the president of Harlem in some ways? Like, I mean, man, she's the president of the whole borough. But she's up here. That's what I love. She has an office on 125th Street. I mean, we used to have to go downtown. Now she's got a place right here in Harlem. So we love that. We, Silicon Harlem, and all of you should drop by our office at some point. We're at 148th and 8th Avenue. So feel free to come by. But one of the things that we just did, July 9th of 2019, it feels like we made history. Who says that? You know, made history. Well, what we did is we had a big shipment come into our office, and we're building the very first data center in the history of Upper Manhattan. Never been done before. We're going to need everyone's help on this, by the way. This is a big deal. It's transformative for the entire Upper Manhattan community. We'll be hiring lots of people over the next 18 months. And it is the #1 investment among Google, Microsoft, and Amazon are data centers. We're all generating so much data that we have to now create that redundancy, that protection, all of that. One of the things I've noticed in Upper Manhattan and probably throughout the borough is that small businesses don't back up their information. And the idea of doing it right now would mean that they would have to go downtown, get a contract with some company that they don't really even know or trust, and most of the small businesses don't do it. So if there's ever an issue in their company, some sort of attack or even some sort of disaster, their business is out, right? They're gone. So we decided, why don't we build a carrier-grade data center in Upper Manhattan. People hate when I say this, but the reason why we get bombed in downtown is because the attackers are not dumb. They know that if you can knock out communications, you can cripple a country, frankly. We ain't afraid of them. They can come all they want. So anyway, the point is that we feel that the city needs to have data centers in other areas besides just in one location, primarily in downtown. And we know that if we have this type of infrastructure, it will help the businesses locally, but it can help businesses as far reaching in the state. That's how powerful our particular data center is being designed. So I just wanted to make that announcement because for me, that's historic. It's going to go down in history, and we're very proud of that. So please come by and check it out. If you're a geek like me, you look like, that's a server? Oh, wow. So thank you, Gail, because a lot of the work that goes into those type of things, you got to have people like Gail who can support you, who can keep you going, and she's been that for us in so many different ways. She talked about the hackathon very briefly, that she goes to hackathons like she goes to movies. Well, the hackathon we had last week had 200 kids. We had 200 kids. And they were hacking on ideas around not only healthy food, but they were also coming up with great ideas on how to get rid of rats. So it was really, really a fun topic. Just to, scare you a little bit more, one kid said, well, I have an idea. What if Gordon, what's the chef's name? Gordon something? Gordon Ramsay cooked a rat for you. Would you eat it? Let's move on, will ya? That's enough of that. But we also love doing this event where all of you entrepreneurs and people working are coming out. And then, as Gail mentioned, we'll also do what we call Demystifying Technology for Seniors next week. And then we end our whole tech sector with preschoolers on robotics. And our summer program this past summer, and I'm going to get the panel going here, we have 20 kids. We're going to graduate them tomorrow, so anybody's invited to come to the graduation, but 20 kids that went through our drone program. They become drone pilots. A certified drone pilot starts at $75 an hour. I was listening to class like this, really? So I'm just saying that it's transformative for those kids. And even for those kids who may not go to college for whatever reason, they have that kind of pathway to a career. So these are the things we love doing, and certainly this particular event today is one of my favorites as well. So let me get moving on what's next here. So I believe we have, by the way, we have the DA's office, so if any of you are trying to make trouble, I got lots of support right here. I definitely want to acknowledge all the chamber people that are here, because like almost everyone here is a chamber person, but it's like nice to see. Oh, and Dr. Z, raise your hand. Dr. Z is in charge of getting everybody to go to Africa in November. So if you want to go to Africa in November, go see Dr. Z. She's the door of return, 400 years. So she's put together, she's from Z. Anybody know what Z means? Zimbabwe. So she's from Zimbabwe, but she is, if you heard the prayer today from Dr. Dillon, that's his wife, and the two of them are putting together a tremendous trip to South Africa. So, and I've been there with them. It's the real deal. And if any of the rest of you have announcements, we'll try to get to them later on. Good? All right, let's move on. So let's start with Office of the Manhattan District Attorney. And we got 3 of them here. They're all going to play some sort of role somehow. But the first one we're going to bring up is Elizabeth Roper. And let's give her a hand as she comes up. Come on up, and you'll be introducing our presentation.
Thank you so much. I just want to start off by saying thank you to Clayton Banks, to the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. We're so excited to be a part of this event, and I'm personally so excited to have an opportunity to speak briefly to this particular audience. And thank you to Borough President Brewer for your excellent remarks and your outstanding leadership in the borough. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Cybercrime and Identity Theft Bureau at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And when you think cybercrime, it sounds lofty, it sounds sophisticated. You think the Target hack, you think Russian cyber criminals. And the reality is our bureau in my office, we do investigate and prosecute a number of sophisticated and very high-profile cases, but the bulk of what we do is investigate and prosecute complaints by individual citizens who have been victimized or affected by cybercrime and identity theft. And a particular case that I think illustrates that and illustrates some of the points that we've heard already today about the importance of educating our communities and particularly educating our younger people is a case that our office announced just yesterday, or a pair of cases in which 35 people were arrested for their role in a scheme in which checks were being stolen, forged, and negotiated to steal millions, literally millions of dollars. And they were being stolen in a few different ways. One is just out of the mail, straight up people phishing checks out of the mail, not sophisticated at all, but very effective. Another way is by hacking into different types of software that check cashing businesses use to store their data, so a lot more sophisticated, but still something that we found that young people were doing and able to do. And then a third way was by the fraudsters recruiting people who work at those businesses. So also, not a cyber infiltration, but an important type of compromise that I think businesses really need to be aware of, and that can expose them to a lot of losses. And the other interesting aspect of that case is that once those checks were stolen and had been used to make forgeries, they were being deposited into accounts belonging to mostly to young people, to high school and college age kids who were recruited primarily on social media. They see Instagram photos or Facebook photos of these people flashing huge amounts of cash, partying at cool bars and restaurants, driving fancy cars, and these people will say to them, look, just let me use your debit card, you'll make money, you'll be a part of this cool lifestyle. And these are kids who are our students, our family members, our children who are really easily victimized by this and can frankly end up themselves getting in a lot of trouble. And so it's an important type of crime that I think everyone needs to be aware of, and that it's a case that we're particularly proud of in our office. And that's really kind of the only point that I want to make. I won't take up too much of your time because I know everyone wants to get to the presentation and the panels. But I just want to emphasize for everyone in this audience that our office, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and my bureau in particular, we're here to be a resource for you, for the community. So if you have a concern, if you're a small business owner, if you're a large business owner, if you have an incident where you think you've been the victim of a cybercrime, you are concerned about identity theft, fraud, please reach out to us. We have a hotline. The number is available on our website at manhattanda.org. And there's really nothing that's too simple or too complicated or too big or too small for us to take a look at. We want to help the community. We want to be a resource. And so even if you just have a question, if there's something you're concerned about, approach me. I'm here this afternoon. But if not that, please pick up the phone and give us a call. The other thing I'll say is that we at the DA's office all know that the best thing we can do for all of you and for the community is not to prosecute crime, right, but it's to help you prevent it from happening in the first place. And that's particularly true when it comes to cybercrime because these crimes are so devastating and so hard to investigate and prosecute. And so I think we're very lucky to have from my office both Jeremy Glickman and Ken Kern, who are going to talk in turn about some different ways that you can help protect yourselves against these types of crimes. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Jeremy Glickman. He's also a member of the Cybercrime and Identity Theft Bureau, as well as counsel to the investigation division in my office. And frankly, there's probably nobody in Manhattan or New York City who has more experience investigating and prosecuting identity theft crimes. So we're very lucky to have him. And he's going to talk to you specifically about protecting businesses and individuals from what we call the insider threat. So that's kind of the check cashing employee I was talking about, the person who you invite into your home or employ in your business who might be in a position to take advantage of that access and ways in which you can hopefully prevent that. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Jeremy. Thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Liz. Good afternoon. All right. Thanks to so many people. Just briefly, we could thank everyone all day, but Clayton, it really is a pleasure. Silicon Harlem doing some tremendous work for the community, and that's really going to be a really interesting next 18 months. Look forward to that. Lloyd Williams with the Chamber, the Greater Chamber, thank you so much for inviting us and having us here. So my name is Jeremy Glickman. I'm an assistant district attorney at the New York County DA's office, and I've been working at the office for about 18 years. I focus on cyber-related crime, and that can be a lot of different crimes. It often is a type of larceny crime. But I'm here today to talk a little bit about the insider threat, which certainly has, like every crime, a kind of cyber angle. But really, cyber is just like technology, and so sometimes you see old crimes with just new technology, and so sometimes the latest thing that we might be looking at to investigate is actually not the latest thing. It's just an old type of crime dressed up in some slightly new clothes. But it's still important stuff. Let me open this up here. Oh, it's up there. Oh, I just can't see it. That's great. I'm gonna have to work with you then. I can work with it if it'll play. See, when I bring my own equipment, I know it works. You know how that goes, right? You know your own stuff. Oh, it's killing me over here. There it is. Okay. Okay. Thank you. From the beginning. That's kind of weird. I'm seeing it move on my side, but I'm not seeing it on your side.
Let me call up.
No.
Let me call up the tech guy.
All right, I appreciate that. I know it's kind of crazy, right? Go ahead. I'm just trying to, I got it up there. I mean, I did that. You got to give me some
You
credit.
did do that.
For better or worse.
Oh, I got a substitute. Okay. Come on.
That's it. It's showing the first slide. It's just move it here, but we're not seeing it over there. Oh, look at that. You got this fancy other panel there. Okay.
You want to duplicate it, right?
That'd be helpful, sure.
Okay, cool.
All right. I had the manual version just in case, because these things happen. You got to go old school sometimes. On paper. We could have gone there, but thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks. Okay. So when Cy Vance became the DA, he recognized the shortcoming in the DA's office and just said, we had a group of people who had been dedicated to working on cyber kind of crime, but he said, you know something, we got to turn this unit into something bigger. And he created a unit into a bureau. So he dedicated a lot more resources because it's, of course, an obvious problem, as he often says, the crime scene of the 21st century. So we're over 24 assistants, including the supervisors. We have a whole forensic lab, so we do our own forensics. NYPD does forensics for the whole city for crimes, but we also do our own forensics. That means when we recover cell phones or computers, we're able to get into them and conduct our investigation in-house. We have in-house detectives. We have sworn investigators who work not in NYPD's offices, not in a precinct, but in our offices with us day to day, which is a much better working environment, and I think a much more collaborative environment that helps us get things done more efficiently and certainly more accurately when we need to. We work on all kinds of cases, but a lot of what we work on, as I said, is kind of cyber-enabled fraud, which is usually about larceny. Most things involving computers are about ultimately trying to do another crime. But sometimes people are trying to get back at someone, they want to damage something, they're trying to embarrass someone, they're using a computer. A lot of what people use computers for are to try and get to the money, or move the money, relating to some other crime, and often there's some financial crime. The insider threat, the concept of that is that, I don't know, it's not magic, it's an insider, someone on the inside. Inside of what? Your home, your business, we're talking about businesses, and it's all kinds of businesses. There is no one's immune, unfortunately, from crime. Financial, banking, big crimes, big companies, retail, huge chains, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, but also the smaller version of all of those things, the local, small, regional, or city-based bank, the small retail. Everyone has to use a computer these days. I don't know what business there is, or rare is the business, that is not somehow using a computer, if not in their day-to-day, at least in some capacity. And so if a computer is being used, that means there is an opportunity for someone. The insider has nothing to do with a computer, but because computers are so prevalent, it almost always has something to do with that. What are we keeping on our computer? What are we using our computer for? What is your business doing? Awareness of the data and the information that you create or make or store or transfer is something that you need to have, because the only reason for there to be any kind of a threat from an insider is because somebody being greedy, somebody wanting to have something that they shouldn't, is taking advantage of something that someone else has, someone you might have or your business might have. But what a business has isn't just yours. The business is the business, right? It's the business bank accounts, it's the business records, but your business has your customers' information, customer credit card information, customers' names and addresses. These are the things that people who are interested in committing some type of other fraud want to get their hands on. And insiders, by virtue of being insiders, have an advantage at getting that. If you're outside, you can't get that. If you are inside, you might be able to get that, and you certainly can get it more easier. There is nothing special about who might be an insider for a type of case like this. Anyone could be an insider. I sound like the Grim Reaper. Like, everyone's talking very positively, like, oh, the computer's good. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta tell you. But, and I don't mean to tell kind of like horror stories like that, but I guess it's kind of like, this is, you know, look, we work on investigating and prosecuting crimes, and we learn. We learn from what people have done so that we can teach or show what we've seen, right? If we do not learn from our mistakes, we are bound to repeat them. So what we see is that everyone has done this at one time or another. Purchasing, sales, accountant, IT, human resources, and the C-suite, executives. Everyone has been involved as an insider in crime at some point. You might think some are more common, some get covered by the press maybe a little bit more. You have all this important information about yourself, about other people, and then if you're a technology company, your intellectual property, which could be invaluable. That could be the whole center of what you've been working for and creating, and you can't even put a dollar value on something like that. But that is another type of data, another type of property that can be the subject of an insider, and it's by virtue of their insider status. They have de facto access. They work for you. They are in your businesses. How are they working for you unless you have also given them access to the things to do their job? The network, the email, the bank account, the customer information, the teller at the bank. Do you have a choice but to hand the teller your identification card? You have to tell the teller your name. You have to tell the teller your bank account information. That's the point. That's the point. And that's why, frankly, it is such a, I think these are some of the worst crimes, particularly when we talk about certain insiders, a home health care aide, because it takes advantage of the most vulnerable, it's the most trusting relationship abused. So it's an abuse of trust, and it's particularly sad, frankly. Just want to see if there's anything else there. Okay, I want to go backwards. Okay. So again, what I have is a couple of examples. I was trying to think of the best way to do this. The problem is that, like life, crime is very diverse and rich in its facts. And Liz started talking about this one case that just came out. She could sit up here for an hour and talk about the ins and outs. She just started talking off the top of her head. Very detailed, complicated things that can occur. So what I wanted to do is try and do a quick survey, because if I were talking just to the healthcare industry, we'd have a particular conversation. If I were talking just to the retail, the banking industry, I'd have another conversation. So I can't really go do a deep dive into every type of industry, but I thought we could kind of touch on a couple to show examples of what type of insiders we're talking about, what did they do, and it might help us think about how we can try and prevent that from happening to you, to your friends, to your colleagues, your family, who might be in a position as business owners or other workers who don't want this to happen to them. So in financial services, a rich area in this, because there is money usually the one, we have cases. People versus Alenikov, an employee who was a software engineer hired by a very large investment bank to help them make software so they can make more money in the markets. on his last day of work, copied thousands of files, sent them to a computer off overseas, literally the hour he left. And he left to join a new startup competitor that was going to compete with his old employer, and he was going to be tasked with creating the platform, the software trading platform that he had just been working on. That's a big deal to that bank, right? And that's a big deal to the people of the state of New York. I mean, you know, it's obviously more sympathetic, and it's seemingly, in some ways, more important when individuals are victimized. But companies are also, you know, people are behind the doors, but the companies are the lifeblood of the city, and so the company's health, even a large company, is still important. It just has a different type of importance than it does when it's an individual victim. People versus Garaventa. That was a bank executive, a vice president at a large multinational bank who, I had forgotten this detail, I prosecuted that case myself. Some of these cases are my colleagues and other people, but I did that case. Well, you know, it was easier for me to write the list of the things I know. But this man created a fake corporation, and he had a high level, he was a vice president, he had a high level of authority and able to write, to transfer, he's making interest payments to account holders. So what he did is he created his own account, and so instead of money going to the right place where it should have gone, he was sending money to his account, an account he controlled. And for times when he couldn't write the check, he was able to convince his coworkers to do him a favor. Now, they did not think what they were doing was a crime. He didn't say, oh, let's steal money together. He said, oh, you know, I need someone to double sign this. Can you just go ahead and sign off on that? Took advantage of kindness, took advantage of coworkers, took advantage of collegiality and professionalism. Because we do that all the time. Again, you have to ask your colleagues for help. That's what you do in a business. But that's what the insider does, takes advantage of their role and their relationships. And what I forgot about that case is that he started doing that on September 16th, 2011. And I told his attorney, I said, listen, if we go to trial on I mean, he can't go to trial. He pled guilty. At least he took responsibility for what he did. But I said, I'm going to have to tell people that on 5 days after September 11th, when people were still crying, this man created a corporation to steal money. And then he continued to do it for 5 years. People versus Naeem Crandall. Insider at a bank, accessed and copied images of checks. This man worked in a bank in a very particular place in a bank. They call it the lockbox. They receive checks, and he's supposed to organize checks for a large utility customer. And all he was doing, well, he was doing his job, I guess. He was organizing those checks, but he was also taking a picture of them as they passed by his hands. And more importantly, because you could just take a picture and I guess put it on Instagram, I don't know what that would be, but he was sending them to a colleague of his in order that the colleague could take that information. Right, a check has, I don't write checks, okay? Check has your name, your address, and it's got your bank account number on it. And it has an example of what your signature looks like. Now, we have to use checks. I say I don't write them. I just strenuously avoid writing them where I don't have to. And I guess just generally I would say if you don't have to, I like paying with cash. And a credit card, the banks seem to be pretty good about reimbursing you. And I've been a victim of identity theft. It seems ironic. I went a long ways without doing it, but it happens. But that information is particularly valuable. If you wanted to find one piece of information that's similar to the case that Liz was describing, getting information about checks is one of the highest kind of pinnacles of what a larceny kind of suspect wants to get their hands on, because they can do so much with it. Not just immediately, but then they have your information, and they've developed more information. And it is kind of scary. It is scary. People versus Tsang, another bank teller. This guy just kind of typed around, pulled out money. He was a front office guy, not a back office guy, and literally walked out of the bank on his last day with $225,000. Went to Atlantic City where he blew it all. People versus QM, another bank teller, recruited by other people, right? I mean, this woman had a job. She had a good job. But she was taken in by a social relationship, someone she thought, let's say, was a boyfriend, who convinced her, who worked at her, She didn't wake up and say, you know, I'd like to steal money. She had a job, she was working, and it is pretty sad. And the reason why it's QM is because this case was able to be resolved in different ways than some other cases, right? When people recognize they make mistakes and can work towards it, right? This isn't the end of her life, it's the beginning of another chapter. She got caught, she did something wrong, but when you own up to it, you can move on. And that's what she was able to do. And I like cases like that because that's a human kind of aspect of things. These people aren't, not everyone isn't necessarily evil or bad. They make bad choices and make bad mistakes. And we work with that too in our office. Our office gets a lot of criticism sometimes because we work what we do. But we also work with the community and work with defendants, right? That's part of what we do. That's part of what I do. Another guy at a bank, investment bank, partner at this used information of his coworkers. His coworkers made credit accounts in their names and then used those things. I don't know what kind of coworker that is, but retail, restaurant. I mean, I could go on. I could stay on that one topic all day, but we're not going to. I'm going to try and move quickly because there's another part of the program. But in the retail industry, that's a big place, right? We go over to a restaurant, I finish my meal, and I hand my credit card to a complete stranger who disappears for 10 minutes. Hello, can I have my card back? I need to leave. I mean, I can't tell you how much theft comes from that. Now, at the end of the day, you have to hand your card over to the waiter. That's how you pay for your food. You have to. You can't not do it. Although now I guess you got these apps and you can do stuff. But I like it. I'm at this new chain now. The reason why I go there, I think, I didn't realize this until just now. The waiter comes over with this device, and he's like, okay, stick your card in. I'm like, oh, I like this. My card doesn't go anywhere. But waiters, unfortunately, also get recruited because they're in a position of trust, a trust with their customers, trust with their employers that they're not going to violate their customers' privacy. And they skim cards, a handheld, battery-powered device in 1 second, right in front of you. We have cases on video. The customer is at the thing, hands over the card, guy takes the card through his hand and then through the machine. Right there, half a second. So it's not that they have to disappear for 5 minutes. Those are the slower, lazy thieves. I don't know what's up with those guys because you can do it like that. Okay. All kinds of people, all kinds of retail, hotel, auditor. It's just, but the common thread, as you hear these, you're going to start hearing the same things, right? Information, credit card information, personal information, being kept, being used, and then someone who necessarily has access to it is taking it, and then they're doing something else with it, something bad, with other people usually. Cashiers use skimming devices. Accounting departments have access to documents where it's all collected. In the healthcare industry, I talked about this earlier, a home healthcare aide. This case is going on right now, and I wish it was the only case we ever had. Unfortunately, it's certainly not the first, and it won't be the last. But she's working for an elderly woman. She's at her house every day. She's got the keys to her house. She gets food for this woman. She takes care of her, she cleans her, and then she also steals checks from her, fills them out and deposits them in her bank account and gives them to other people for other benefit. I mean, it really is hard to understand some people sometimes. People versus Resi, healthcare, but she worked on the accounting side, not for individual person, but the accountant who you talk to and say, here's my credit card to take care of my mother. I'm hiring your company to take care of my elderly father, my elderly mother. Well, she's got that information. She took that, and then she posted all the photos. We talked about social media and the allure of that, but photos of her at the World Wrestling Federation, something. She was getting tickets to concerts. She got VIP tickets. All of that paid for with their customer stuff. And fortunately, the evidence is great for us because the thing she bought fraudulently, I got her Instagram account with her at the thing, holding up the belt. It was good. Well, you got to find a little of the humor in it, right? It's sad, but it's, you know, you got to find a little bit of the humor because we are all human, but it really is, sometimes it helps to do that. People versus Chisholm. Again, this is a hospital employee. You know, a woman goes into a hospital, her stuff goes missing, and hospital employee is depositing her checks. Well, what do we think happened there? People versus Daniels, a home healthcare aide who convinced, you know, a now very elderly woman, not only did she steal $300,000 from her, but convinced her to put her on her will, and was on the will. And as part of the disposition, we had to get her to agree that she would disclaim any benefit of that will. But again, nothing is immune. Transportation, a car service company, the person you call up, I guess now using Uber and Lyft, you're not calling up anybody anymore, but in my day, we used to call people up. Can you come? You have an account, or corporate accounts. Credit card numbers, people's information, telephone numbers. You wouldn't think some of this stuff is valuable. You think, okay, credit card number is valuable. Name, why is that so valuable? Because they use that. If I'm going to open up a credit account, I don't need your credit card. I'm going to open up my own credit card with your stuff. Name, address. With just that, the internet, technology, computers have allowed people to develop more information on their victims and then victimize them. So even what seemingly is innocuous information can be used ultimately to commit serious theft. We talked about technology. That's an employee who, I guess he was fired, right? This guy was fired and was pissed off at his company. And so he went back in because they did not control the access to the computer systems of a former employee. And he was able to get in. And when he got in, he just started deleting stuff. And when I say stuff, I don't mean delete an email. I mean he deleted servers of a large company, backups, and the backups of the backups, and the whole email. And he shut down a large company for a few days for them to get the crazy backups that they had somewhere else that didn't back up everything. And that's a big company. And as Clayton was talking about, I mean, some people, you can't back everything up, right? You have to back things up, though. This crazy ransomware, if you're familiar with that crime, have you heard of that? That's when something bad happens on your computer, and basically the only thing that you see is a sign that says, your stuff is locked, you ain't getting it, send me some of this electronic money and I'll tell you how to do it, right? If you have a backup, you take that computer and you delete everything and you put your backup back there. You're okay. If you don't have a backup, apparently you're going to be paying some criminal for your data because you don't have a choice, or you're not getting your data back because it's that strong. Computer technology now, you can't get into it. I can't get into it. The police can't get into it. It's gone. With all that bad news, I just want to say oh, sorry, you knew I'd get into it at one point, right? A little bit. But what can you do? I mean, it depends a little bit, but what you need to always continue to use is your common sense, right? In every one of these instances, it's things that computers are involved in, but they're not necessarily the end-all, be-all. So again, be aware about who you have working for you and what you have going on. You know, you got to know who's coming in. Now, it doesn't mean that you're doing a crazy full background check, but you have to know who's coming in. You have to know what you have and who has access to your stuff, so that you can feel comfortable about that person being there with your information, with your customer information, with your colleagues' information, right? You have to check out vendors, right? I mean, some of those examples were people who created their own companies to siphon money out. Is that what's going on? You have to have clear policies. Your employers got to know your employees have to know what's expected of them and what you expect from them, right? Everyone would want that. Are there company credit cards? Okay. You know, it's one thing to have an abuse of a credit card. It's another thing to outright use it and, you know, buy trips to Vegas and other stuff. You know, what's the computer use policy? Do people know when they can access the computers that you have and the data and what it's for? Audits, you gotta take a look and see what's been going on every once in a while, right? If you just wait for there to be a problem, you just would have a big problem. But if you're diligent, kind of like tax time, maybe more often than that, about just saying, okay, what is my inventory? What is my payroll look like? Ghost employees on a payroll. We had a case where a person who was in charge of HR put other people on the payroll, and then when the check got generated, he just took the check. There was a dozen people who did not work for this company who were getting paid, and I guess taxes were getting taken out of that. There is no dearth of creativity for fraud. And if the same people that did some of these frauds just redirected, they'd be very successful at other things, but they're also pretty successful at crime until they get caught. Finally, you got to have up-to-date computer stuff. We talked about that ransomware. You got to have virus protection. You got to have that stuff. You got to have up-to-date software in order to have that, because you can have it on there, but they keep creating new versions. And so your old version might be good for the old stuff, but no one's trying to get you with the old stuff. They're trying to get you with the new stuff. And you got to appropriately restrict stuff. Just because someone works for you doesn't mean, okay, here are the keys, have at it, right? I mean, if you got a salesperson and they're doing sales, good, they have access to the stuff they need for sales. But if there's other parts of your business that has nothing to do with sales, sales has no business touching that, right? And the same goes vice versa. So appropriately restrict what access, physical access, right? We're talking about computers, but things get printed out and things get stored. You print out records and then they're in a cabinet. That guy in the bank thing was not working with electronic images, although I have a guy doing that, just taking screenshots, screenshot. This guy has checks. So computers are involved, but there's that. So most importantly, what do you have? What do you have for you? What do you have for your customers? Where do you keep it? How are you keeping track of it? Who has access to it? And then I also just want to mention that even completely loyal, honest, great insiders can also be a threat, because they could inadvertently do something. There's been a large scam that's worth mentioning called the business email compromise. That's a label we've put on it. There's come variants of it. But what happens is an employee gets an email, what looks like an email, from one of their colleagues, maybe the high-level colleague, maybe the boss. It's on Friday, it's 4:30. I need that transfer right now. Got to go ahead and send that. It looks like it comes from the boss. It is not from the boss. Interestingly, these emails often come, it needs to be urgent. Need it right away. It's Friday. They often come, while that executive is away, while someone's not there on vacation. In the middle of a real deal. Something's actually going on. Real estate transactions. And the buyer's lawyer gets an email. You know what? That escrow is now going to a different account. It's going here. Seen a number of those. Now, it's a little scary. How is someone knowing about that? It's because they got into someone's email. The first thing that happened in that fraud was the hack. And they're reading the email. They're not just in the email like, ooh, I'm in the email. They're reading the email. And then they get into the part where something's good going on, or they're waiting. And then they send emails like this. They spoof the emails. I just showed you Jeremy Glickman at yahoo.com versus Jeremy 6 Lickman, right? But if you just look at it, it looks like Glickman in the back. I don't know how your eyes are. It almost looks like Glickman to me. That's a 6. Or president at industry versus president at L industry. There's actually no difference that you can see with an L and an I. Our defendants have incorporated websites, have created the domains at GoDaddy one day, with a stolen credit card, mind you, one day created that website, ldistry.com. So whatever a company name is, I don't know, we'll take, instead of the T, it's an L, it's an I, it's a 3 backwards. And you just look at it carefully and you think it's who it's coming from. And it's talking about something you know about. You need to verify. What do you do about that? You call up. Someone wants to transfer money? That's great. You call up the person and say, or you can send an email back saying, okay, that's great, I'm going to talk to you in a second. You have to contact them a different way, not in the email, not that email that came. Now, you can have this set up in advance like it's some code. Some companies do that, like special codes. But call the person up and say, I just got this email. Did you did this, right? Sometimes there is an emergency transfer of some kind that needs to be done. I don't know. But so you got to educate your employees about this, right? It's great that your employees want to hop to it and help you out. You, the boss, oh, yes, sir, I'll get that for you. But it's not great if they do it and it's not you. So you want to educate your employees. So an insider threat could be someone who's just a really dedicated employee who wants to immediately respond to a request they think is coming from their colleague or their boss. That's about it. I could talk all day. There's a lot going on. But I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Okay, anytime.
Oh, man. Whew. I'm going to throw my computer away. Here's the good news. You didn't give us a lot of good news, man. You locked up a lot of people. That's a good thing. But the good news is, I think I read a report back in 2014 that there were 1 million jobs available in cybersecurity that were not being filled. The projection over the next 2 years is that's going to grow to 3 million. So if there's anything we should walk out of here with is that there's an opportunity to actually get people in the pipeline. Jeremy made a great point. Once one cybersecurity issue gets patched, there's another one coming right after it. That means when you go into cybersecurity, you never lose your job. So with 3 million global jobs available that are not filled, we here in Harlem and all throughout New York City ought to start thinking about how do we create that pipeline. And I know there's already good efforts happening in that way throughout the universities. Even the chambers jumped in, and we certainly believe that it's important. Those are good jobs. So now we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to bring up the panel. And I think, by the way, does anybody have any questions right off the top for the DA's office? Oh, by the way, Lavonda, who works at Chase Bank, right? Luckily they are secure, but you have a question. Let's see if you have a question. I can only take one question, and then we're going to get the panel up.
Thank you, Clay. And this, I was hoping to get it in before I run out of putting more money in my meter. First, I want to say thank you for sharing that valuable information. As you were speaking really quick, I just want to point out, because we can't live in fear, right? And fraud occurs inside as well as outsiders. And the key is knowing, what am I going to do about it? And so I just want to share real brief that our bank specifically, and I'm sure other financial institutions, have information available as it relates to your business or relates to you personally. For example, not using checks. What are other forms of payment? ACH payments is one example. Other forms of using your credit card. If someone holds on to that debit card, you know what? Cancel the card, get a replacement card. You know, just basic things, and alerts, setting up alerts, communicating within the office. There are workshops, there are programs, there's information that is available to our customers that we share with you. And yes, we're investing millions and millions and millions of dollars, hiring more and more people, because fraud is clearly an epidemic, and the important thing we want to encourage everyone is to be informed and to know what to do about it. Thank you.
That almost, needs an applause or something. Wow, that kind of investment is real and is good. And if you haven't been by the new Chase space on 125th Street, I encourage it. They really are investing in Harlem. Let's get the panel up here. I think Daniel and Lauren and Ken and Don, let's all get up here and chop it up around international business, international affairs, and sort of the cybersecurity risks that come with that. You know, the world is connected. All countries are connected. People are utilizing the internet all day, every day. There's a lot of great things that come out of that, but one of the things of having a completely networked world is it's also vulnerable. So one of the things we wanted to do around the theme of how our local businesses leads to global commerce, right? So we know that, you know, Upper Manhattan and Harlem has been really focused on entrepreneurialism and helping our startup businesses do great work. But now we're making sure that that's informing the entire world on how we can work together. So with this distinguished panel, and all of you can participate in this conversation. So even though we have this distinguished panel with some extreme expertise, all of you should jump in and tie in and certainly ask questions. But I'm going to start literally with the Mayor's Office of International Affairs. This young lady who has been a good steward for this city, but more importantly for me, she's been a great friend to Silicon Harlem. And we love it when she comes around and helps us out. So it was just apropos that she would be here today. This is right up her alley, especially the international connection that we're talking about. So, Lauren, why don't you come up here and say a few remarks from the very start here.
Thank you, Clayton. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Nadras, Director of Economic Development at the Mayor's Office for International Affairs. I feel like Clayton brought me here to bring a little bit of sunshine and positiveness, which is, I'm a glass half full person, so that's great. So I'll just share briefly about our office, what we do, but also, as far as brief sunshine and such, is the opportunities that we've got in regards to the cyberspace, and some opportunities that small businesses, innovators, entrepreneurs can tap into. And so briefly about our office, the Mayor's Office for International Affairs is the main liaison office of New York City to the whole international community. We've got the largest diplomatic corps in the world. We are liaising with 116 consulates, 193 permanent missions to the UN and the UN. The economic development work that I lead in the office is threefold, particularly on the services that we provide, is one, bringing in international businesses into New York City, hence growing opportunities on innovation, hiring New Yorkers, et cetera. And then the second is working with New York City-based businesses, particularly immigrant-owned, minority-owned, and women-owned businesses, and helping them grow. And whether that be globally, we can also be a service to connect you to those opportunities. And then third are policies and programs that really serve your needs, New Yorkers' needs on the economic development front, international businesses as well. And the main program that I wanted to share today is the Cyber NYC initiative, which is a $100 million public-private partnership and investment that the city is doing to basically harness the creativity of people and New Yorkers and the international business community to create solutions to counter a lot of the things that we are facing on the cyberspace. And so I will go through that briefly. So with that, it really has, and that is really trying to create, Clayton was saying about high-paying jobs, really creating the path for New Yorkers towards high-paying jobs in the cyberspace. And that is a growing area there, and also creating jobs as well. So one is, three goals, is one, to create the cyber workforce of the future. And two, is to also establish New York City as the global leader on the cyberspace, particularly making it as an international landing pad for businesses all over the world, and really harnessing all the creative ideas on how to counter a lot of these cyber threats. And then third is really catalyzing the next billion-dollar company, which could be in this room, and helping you tap into the investors, the training, the mentorship, et cetera, that you might need, particularly from an ideation stage to a startup stage to a growth stage company. So I'll go through some of the programs that we're doing. So there's several of them. There's about 6 key ones, and I'll give a snapshot of that. So one is the Global Cyber Center, and that is basically, it's being built at this time. So it's going to be basically a live lab. It's going to be 8 floors, and that's going to be at the heart of this initiative, 8 floors of a live lab of entrepreneurs and startups from all over the world, especially New Yorkers, to really try out and test out all these ideas and how to counter cyber threats, et cetera. And definitely one of the opportunities that we see is that we do have a lot of financial services in the area. We do have, a really vibrant sector. We see that as a potential way that, or I think our Citibank was that. So we've got also Chase. So we've got also partnerships with some of the biggest companies that are here and home here in New York City, and able to test out several of these solutions. And with that, that's really to be a live lab and also a landing pad for entrepreneurs within New York and also globally. And the second one is, it's focusing more on, if you have ideas, it's more on the startup stage. If you have ideas and really being able to pitch that to companies such as, the different financial sector companies. And then the third one is from Inventors to Founders program, which is actually run by Columbia Technology Ventures, and basically for pre-seed and seed stage companies to be able to have the mentorship, the training, and link to the venture capitals and investors so that they can grow that idea and make that into a business. The other one is Cybersecurity Moonshot Challenge. So that is actually, there's this moonshot challenge that our friends at the CTO office and others in the mayor's office, et cetera, is basically doing this moonshot challenge globally and really asking, what are some of the best ideas actually that that can be surfaced to support small businesses to be as prepared as Fortune 500 companies, right? So the small businesses in our neighborhoods, how can you be as prepared as, like the big financial institutions down Wall Street? And with that, there's going to be $1 million investment prize for that company, as well as mentorship, et cetera, to help grow that idea further. And then the next thing is, second to last, is the Applied Learning Initiative. So this is working with students, so undergrad, grad school, through community-led consortium, and also training them and to prepare for the job market, and also the workforce shortage in cybersecurity, so that pipeline development of talent to try to solve the problems that we have in that space, as well as leveraging and trying to tap into the opportunities that's available. Last is the Cyber Bootcamp. So that Cyber Bootcamp is through our Full Stack Academy. So that also, we want to ensure that those that are tapping into these opportunities are also representative of New York, so all across all communities. And there's a large diversity and equity and inclusion aspect on that, so that the opportunities that are in this space is equally distributed. So that is a brief, snapshot of the program. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we've got a lot of folks here. But I think that for that aspect is really, there are all these threats, but there are also all these opportunities that are available, and the city is investing in to try to make solutions and try to build a better future on that aspect. And then the last point, and I'll end it on a personal note, I really love the work that Clayton has been doing on Silicon Harlem. It's been amazing, and it's even inspired me personally. So I have a 4-year-old that just wrapped up entrepreneurship camp and also STEAM camp. And they're building out, they built and launched their first business in 5 days. So 4-year-old in 5 days built and launched their business, and the concept of that, and built a lemonade stand. They did, market research. They went and tested all this, lemonade stand at different places, which one was competitor. They were checking out their competitors, and then also what the pricing of that was, and then also, interviewed all these people, and what flavor would you like, Clayton? Would you like strawberry? Would you pay for this and stuff? So it's really great. So and that was also some of the programs across the city, are to get these young folks to also just kind of think through these ideas and think of the possibilities and building, the future and building the solutions. I think it's great. And I really love this STEAM camp. We also participate at our office with Clayton on that, particularly because, I definitely think, there's so many resources that the city does, and in partnership with Silicon Harlem, for example, it's just making sure also that our communities are able to tap into those. So with that said, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Lauren. Ooh, that was a lot of opportunity. Ooh, jeez. I gotta get a new phone or something. So we're gonna keep it moving. And everybody okay right now? You okay? Okay, good. We're gonna put your questions for Lauren in your head and in your phone. We're gonna come back to that. We're gonna have a good, strong Q&A time frame. I'm gonna keep the panel going, but I also have. Are you gonna join the panel here, Tariq? Why don't you come on up? So we have City College here. He's the head of engineering. He probably won't want me to say this, but I came to his lab, and there are things they're doing at City College that is really scary. But since the DA's office is here, I'm not going to tell on you. It is scary. Scary. I'm not, and I see a lot of stuff. The stuff I saw over there was like military level. So I encourage you to speak to him directly. I don't want to get arrested up in here. All right, so Ken Kern, who you seen, he's also from the DA's office. We have Daniel here from LDI, and we have Don, who also is a part owner of a cybersecurity company. So we've got all these brain power, and of course I talked about Dr. Tariq, who's running an engineering and lab for cybersecurity on City College campus. And he and I are doing a lot of great things together. But so we got all these great minds. So this is like, may never have this assembly again, right? And this kind of talent assembled in one place at one time. So let's go home. No, I'm just kidding. So, Ken, do you want to do a couple of slides? Can you be very quick? 4 minutes, okay. Ken Kern.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ken Kern. It's a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you. I serve on behalf of District Attorney Cyrus R. Vance, along with my two colleagues here. I just want to ask you 3 questions. Did you know that 17 months ago, the city of Atlanta was hit with a ransomware attack, and that they could not have basic government functions going on? Did you know that in Baltimore, 9 months ago, the 911 system went down such that people weren't able to call when someone was having a heart attack? Did you know, third question, did you know that 2 weeks ago, the governor of Louisiana declared a state of cyber emergency, the first time that it ever happened in the United States, because the school system was hit with malware, so students weren't able to go ahead and access the data. So those 3 questions, some scary stuff, but I actually want to share with you 2 things that can actually be a solution to help us all. We're a community. We're here to protect our families and our global community and local community. So I want to thank Mr. Banks, Mr. Williams, and Columbia for the opportunity to speak with you, to say in 4 minutes, I want to introduce 2 things to you. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Global Cyber Alliance, created 4 years ago. If you're interested as an individual citizen or an institution to have free tools at the most sophisticated level to protect yourself, your family, or your business, this is groundbreaking work that the district attorney, along with 2 other co-founders, created in September 2015. These are some of the big names that exist, but let me tell you that our partnership includes everybody along this table. I was with Mr. Banks as a partner. We were up in Boston 2 weeks ago at a cyber training. So we're very grateful to have partnership with our local community as well as now 31 countries. Here are the sectors that participate. Great individuals running the organization. When we were trying to figure out what it is that we tackle, phishing was the #1 because 80% of all attacks start from the phishing campaigns. 4 free tools. If you take anything away from this, I want you to take 2 things away. You can get this free tool, these 4 free tools, at globalcyberalliance.org. Downloadable with easy to understand videos. So even if you don't have a business, but your friend does, or a member of your church does, please go ahead, globalcyberalliance.org. We want to protect our business. Toolkit #3 is fully there. If you introduce that into your cybersecurity framework, you increase your cybersecurity potential 85%. You're stronger 85% using that toolkit. I'm going to skip ahead. I heard the remarks about Africa. We're thrilled that in Nigeria we have partners there, elite cybersecurity professionals that are working with the other 31 countries to really try to figure out a global solution. Second thing I want you to take away, we talk about the threats to the city, and the city is leading on this. Along with the District Attorney's Office, the New York Police Department, our Global Cyber Alliance, and the New York City Cyber Command created something called the New York City Cyber Critical Services and Infrastructure. Wall Street Journal article announced on April 1st of this year, which said what? We're doing great things with Global Cyber Alliance protecting the world. What are we doing here to protect our infrastructure? When that 911 attack happened in Baltimore, that could happen here. It happens to our hospitals. It happens to our office. How are we protecting our electrical grid, our healthcare, our hospitals? Did you know in the UK 1 year ago, doctors, physicians, nurses couldn't access medical records at hospitals because of a ransomware attack? And the idea behind this is we're stronger together than separate. So we bring together organizations across these sectors, sit around the table, and say, do 3 things. Number 1, share real-time threat information. So if NYPD has information about a threat to the government, how are we sharing that with the healthcare industry? How are we sharing it with hospitality? Water. 1.1 billion gallons of water comes into New York City every day by sensors, by electronics. An attack against that grid would be devastating for our city. So, number 1, share real-time information. Number 2, train jointly together. Tariq and I were up in Boston on the 26th of July going through real drills to make sure that we've got we know what to do when the S hits the fan. And we know what to do, and when you got to break that glass to get to that plan, that we have a plan that we've developed to protect the city, and that's the leadership that the city has brought to it. And number 3, real-time information sharing, train together, and we actually have volunteers. In case something happens in healthcare, can we have folks in the other sectors who can come and help? In the same way that we talked about, Jeremy referenced 9/11. The best part of the city was we came together to deal with it. Same idea. So I have for you up here the article of Wall Street Journal. New York City creates a cybercrime brigade. That's for everyone that we'll hand out. And then a recent CNN article about the training we did. This city, because of leadership from people like Mr. Williams, Mr. Banks, is at the forefront of doing phenomenal things. We're thrilled to be a part of it. Thank you for your time and attention. And we stand together with you in trying to deal with this.
That is awesome. You guys aren't so bad after all. We're going to keep it moving, and I'm going to ask those who have not had remarks so far, if you could just introduce yourselves and give us a quick little synopsis of what you're doing, and then I want to go straight into Q&A. All right, so why don't we start with you, Daniel, and go on down. You start with you, Daniel. Come on down, since Tariq is he's still processing what I said. You go right there.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Dan Reyes. I'm from LDI called a Toolbox. I run the Managed IT Services division of LDI, so we help small businesses with all of their IT security and infrastructure needs.
Excellent.
Hello, I'm Don Ulsh. I'm the CEO of Cyber 2020 out of New York and Delaware. I also lecture on cyber threats at West Point, and I'm a research fellow also at Boston College. My firm specializes in the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning applied to cyber threat detection, principally from adversary nation states such as China, North Korea, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and transnational organized crime.
My name is Tariq Saadawi. I'm with City College of New York. I'm a professor there, but also I have a cybersecurity lab. That's my area. But the main thing I would like to discuss about is City College is part of CUNY, which New York City Cyber. That's basically we're heavily involved with you. So definitely we are working on that. But also regarding as part of that program, we have to, well, they kind of funded us to to be able to establish a cybersecurity master program. So we're going to offer in fall 2020 a master program, and a lot of ideas coming out. As a matter of fact, we're going to also offer where a student can start bachelor and master together in 5 years in cybersecurity only. So that's also in the workout. In terms of industry participation in the program, we really have, for example, now Facebook is teaching a course, a lab, hands-on experience in our departments in computer science. We're doing the same approach with other industry. I'm talking now with Verizon, talking with AT&T. Basically, a lot of industry will be involved also in that master program. Now, one last thing I would like to mention is the training we had with the Global Cyber Global Alliance on Friday. It was a great thing. It was really a drill where it has, first of all, it was different people from different sector, health, from financial, from transportation, from the energy, education, and we all sat in the same room where IBM had that simulated environment of a cyber attack, and it was really great. I mean, it was quite an experience, and I think there will be a continuation. I hope also that a smaller version for the education, for that master program we're talking about, we can convince IBM to design a specific version to go for a master program in cybersecurity, because again, those are the future leaders in cybersecurity, and we have to pay attention to their needs.
All right. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but anyone who has a question right now, I'm going to start it up. We're going to try not to do speeches, right? I'm in New York, so I know that happens. We're going to try to keep it to, we got too many great minds up front to, I know everyone else has a great mind too, but please try to do a question because I learn more from your questions.
Okay, at the risk of sounding like a Luddite, I have 4 people who work for me. Do I need to put online access information about them, or can I just put that in a separate computer that's not online and protect their information that way? Because marital status, birthplace, that stuff doesn't have to be online. If I have that in a separate computer and I maintain 2 systems, one's online, the other one is standalone, is that a practical way to secure information?
Okay. Straight up question. Who's got the answer?
I'll start, and there are a lot of experts here. Do you know in Singapore, they on every desk for every person who works for the government, they get 2 computers, one for their personal, one for their business. So what you're saying is for your business, can you separate out the data from what's pertinent and what's, say, non-pertinent? Absolutely. And I can say, getting companies and businesses away from collecting some of this data, your dentists don't need your social security numbers, so you don't need to give it. Be careful with what you give out.
Depends on how expensive it is. Let's keep it real. We have a question over here.
Hi, this is for Don Oates. Don, it seems that in some respects we're behind the curve when it comes to addressing the whole issues of cyber threats. Is it possible for us to get ahead of that and in essence leapfrog, say with some of the methodologies that you're developing at Cyber 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, the problem is that the cyber attacks occur every day, 24/7. And so if we look at who is attacking us, they're largely well-funded organizations, whether it's organized criminal groups out of Eastern Europe, sometimes in Asia, or whether they are adversary nation states. The issue is, if you take the Ministry of State Security in the People's Republic of China, multi-trillion-dollar economy, they can throw as much power, as much hacking power as can North Korea and even Iran as they wish to. So it's very hard to combat that. So the way that I look at the situation right now is that some days they win, some days we win. But there are two things going on right now that are particularly important. One is applying machine learning and deep learning to be able to predict what a cyber threat is going to do, to be able to predict where is it coming from, who's going to launch it, what chance does it have to succeed, how do we defend against that. So that's a part of the machine learning and deep learning. What we really don't do is we don't defend our networks well enough. And why don't we do that? Is because cybersecurity is expensive, but I think hopefully we're reaching the point where executives and government officials understand that we've got to get control of this. So there's a program going on right now where the U.S. federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, is reaching out to industry. So we were just retained by Homeland Security to actually work with New York banks and other banks to try and get them to move to artificial intelligence to strengthen those cybersecurity network defenses. But there's one other scary thing going on, and then I'll turn it over to someone else. But quantum computing is a significant factor, and there are a few companies right now that are trying to develop full-scale commercial quantum computing systems. When that happens, all of the data that we have encrypted right now is virtually unencrypted if they're attacked using quantum technology. So there is a lot of money right now going into a few companies that are developing quantum encryption. So if we look at why major states such as China and Russia have been collecting even top secret information from the United States for years, even though it might take them 100 years or 400 years to break the encryption algorithms, the utilization of quantum technology can break those encryption algorithms very quickly, almost immediately. So in my view, this is a cyber war because we are defending against attacks that can actually kill people, that can destroy plants. So the internet now has been turned into a weapon of destruction, and it can cause a lot of damage, such as the steel mill in Germany that was literally blown up in a cyber attack in 2014.
Okay.
I just wanted to cheer everybody up.
Yeah, I guess so, man. Well, thank you, Don. That's actually really good insight. It obviously, again, every bad thing that we hear actually should lead to an opportunity. We have a chance to try to stop some of these things. Do you have a question? Okay. Let's keep it a question, my man.
Will do. Keith Williams, it's been a challenge with tech, but thank you. But thank you very much for people like Clayton Bank and coming to these. I've gotten a little bit better, a little more comfortable. On your computer, you're really working diligently. You suddenly get this pop-up that something needs to be updated. It could be Avast or Microforce or something. The deepest trouble I had, I responded to what I thought was the correct Microsoft logo. The colors was in different places than normal. I had to have 3 on separate occasions go deep. How can a person that doesn't have a lot of tech savvy be able to identify a real update that's necessary compared to something that's not?
Excellent. Great. Daniel?
Yep. I think security literacy is probably the number one key to defending ourselves. The weakest link in any security defense is going to be that human element, and a lot of people have made that sort of statement today in different ways, in that it's usually through phishing or through something else where someone has done something, clicked something, opened something that they shouldn't have, and then gotten themselves into trouble. In the specific situation that you're describing, what I like to do, because I see those things sometimes too, and I sometimes would, rather than take the convenient step of clicking on, okay, update now, is if I think maybe something needs to be updated, is to rather close that out and manually trigger an update or manually run an update or manually go to the website rather than open a link that I have doubts about or click on something that I have doubts about. I'd rather take the extra 2 or 3 steps, manually type in the website, make sure I'm on the right website, and then run the program that way That way I'm sure it's coming from a legit source rather than something that might not be.
Go ahead, Don. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment and just elevate this to a little bit higher level for a moment. And that is, we're involved in an economic war, and that's what this is. So when we talk about economic warfare, what do we really mean? We're talking about jobs, livelihood. We're talking about the ability to earn a paycheck, to maintain a job. And I just want to give you one brief example. So in the year 2000, the People's Republic of China controlled 14% of the global steel industry. From about 2006 through about 2012, the Ministry of State Security, working with the Chinese Army and the Cyber Command, was able to penetrate the secure systems at United States Steel. They stole thousands of secrets. That information was turned over to the commercial but sort of government-controlled steel industry in China. And today, or as of 2015, China now controls 49%, close to 50% of the global steel market. Now, that results in a loss of market share, loss of revenue, loss of stock value, loss of income. Over 15,000 jobs in the US were lost, and that doesn't even include the jobs that were lost downstream with all the suppliers around the world. So, when we think about cyber threats, it really is about money, it's about the economy, and establishing economic superiority as part of a strategic global threat. So
let me ask you a question, Lauren. When you are working within your facility, first of all, Don, you are really, something else with your statistics. I love it, though. We need to know this. But it leads to a good point when you talk about economics. You're looking at international business now. Everyone's like basically an international company. How are you advising some of the people you work with, those who are trying to get more and more relationships with other countries? How does that work within the mayor's office?
Yeah, sure. So I think some positive statistics and some data as well is that, I think maybe what I'll share is the competitive advantages that we have as New York City. As I was sharing, we have a ton of the Fortune 500s here, so we can really test out a lot of the solutions and also really partner, just literally take the subway down and partner with several of the biggest companies, and they're also hungry to create these solutions. And also I think the other aspect is that, we've got a really large and diverse workforce. We have a 4.4 million people. Is also everyone wants to come to New York. I like to say that. Biased about it, but there's a lot of opportunities that we're offering up as a city, and $100 million public-private investment. And that also, I think, to break that down, is that $30 million is from the city, but the chunk is $70 million from private companies that are investing in this, and it's growing continuously. And I think the other aspect that you alluded to as well, Clayton, is also the really, for us New Yorkers, the opportunities there for building a cyber workforce. It's basically, the future. What are the solutions that we're going to be able to make? And Columbia and the CUNY-led affiliates are really doing a lot of things to get some of the undergrads and even younger folks to really get into that space. So I really come from a space that there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of investment, money being put where where people are saying that they're going to do it. So I think that's a positive aspect. I think the other aspect also is there's a lot of funders. So here alone is $1.2 billion in VC funding in 2017. A lot of that is also a growing space for if you're trying to figure out solutions in this space. There's money out there to pitch your ideas, and folks are hungry for those ideas because there's also a lot of commercial demand that is happening. And then, being where we're at Columbia, we have 100+ academic and universities. And so as far as brilliant minds, we've got it all here. And then on the global international aspect as well is that, we're linked to every single country. And really using that through our office is really using that to leverage and being a convener and bringing those ideas and those solutions to the city.
Excellent. Ken, I'm going to ask you to follow up on that with the Alliance and what that's doing. You talked a little bit about it in your presentation, but tell me about it from the perspective of just an entrepreneur in this room or a business here in Upper Manhattan or in New York City. How do they, like, why would they join the Alliance? Well, what's the incentive? Is there a cost? I want to be a little more detailed.
So Global Cyber Alliance is the organization that I talked about, which the district attorney created in September of 2015. There's no cost. It's not a pay-to-play, meaning you just bring your talents and your interest into that conversation. You can be a large company or entity like a Bloomberg, or you can be a small mom and pop that wants to contribute. I think the idea behind all of it is that the experience that individuals, not just the techies, bring to the table is really invaluable. So we have 3 different committees. I showed you the executive committee. That's the legal one that has to exist. Then there's something called the strategic advisory committee. What's that? That's the folks who set the course. What are we going to tackle? What do we need? What's the problems? That's where the voices in this room and others can actually say, look, we've got problems that we need to deal. Our churches, our congregations are being hit with cyber attacks. How are you going to focus on that? We want you to help us with that. So why do people join? Because all of us want to do the right thing. That starts. And all of us want to do it in an intelligent, coordinated way. And when you put together something that doesn't require you to pay, gives you value without cost, and helps change the lives of our children, people want in on that.
Wow, that's good to know. And so all of us should be looking at that. I'm going to come to you, Judith, in one moment. I just want to ask Dr. Tarek, did I pronounce that better? Thank you so much. You know, like I said, I went over to your lab. I met some of your students. Very impressive. What's the future like when we look at preparing our pipeline for cybersecurity specialists? Like, what do you, I haven't even, when I looked around the country at different colleges, I didn't see a lot of master programs. I haven't seen really any PhD programs. But I'm just curious, like, how do we start to, or how do you look at the pipeline?
Okay, to mention actually the PhD program, our PhD students is Hussein. If he's coming here, he can mention about what he's doing. But basically, say it again. Oh, okay, sorry. If we're talking about what is the future in cybersecurity, a couple of things. Definitely, we heard about artificial intelligence and machine learning, deep learning. This area is growing very fast, very rapidly. This is a must area. However, there are new areas also that people are looking at. For example, what is the best system everybody knows about in defending? It is human body. So how can we emulate the human body to the network? So that's another area called artificial immune system. So we mimic what is in the human body to the network. The network is like the human body, and we put all kind of protection similar to what we as a human do. So that's totally new area, and actually we have research going in that area. Another area that's very important also is blockchain. We all know about Bitcoin, and well, the technology below Bitcoin is called blockchain, and it is secure. And what is it? It is nothing more than a distributed, secure database. It's like general ledger in the business, but the general ledger is spread across everybody like in Bitcoin. So everybody can monitor that general ledger. So that's the blockchain. So now how we can use that also in cybersecurity, we developed actually patent in cybersecurity using blockchain. It belongs to City University of New York. So that's another area. And definitely there is a lot of other areas that are coming in the pipe, but that just to give you a flavor of what is going.
Nothing like having a professor on the board. There will be a test after this. We're going to go to you, young man, and then we're going to come up here to Judith.
Yes. Hello. Thank you all for being here on this panel. My question, I work in the space of digital literacy and digital learning, both K-12 and adults. And I always find myself grappling with how do you create compelling content for, obviously I'm talking about all people, but if you know any organizations or people that come to mind who really are well equipped to help either that kind of high school to college age person deeply understand the power of digital security, digital understanding, or adults maybe 10 years deep in their career and have proficiency in law or other skills, but really do need to understand how to protect themselves and protect their organizations. Do you know any organizations that really are hyper-focused on that literacy and education portion? That's the question.
Silicon Harlem. Yeah, we do a lot of that, and I'll talk to you afterwards about that. I'm glad that you're interested in that. We definitely do a lot of that. The gentleman right there in the plaid jacket, he will also help you with that. Judith, and then we'll come back to you.
I just have a quick question about, so I'm a techie, and I can detect these fraud emails and things like that. And like, for example, for the Microsoft, when you actually would go to Microsoft and like go to the website and want to report like something like this or fraud, I find like when I go to like Google or Facebook, I want to report, and they have like a link like report fraud, and then you just go through this endless loop, and then you just get discouraged to actually report that you've detected a fraud. And there's sometimes I will go out my way because I see this fraud can become really, you know, like because I can pick it up, I can see it. So where is the responsibility on the other end of the company, like that has a link, that's a valid link that you can actually report an incident, and they take responsibility in handling that fraud or that makeshift logo or things like that that they can report to you? Because I feel like the companies don't want to receive it because they don't want to take responsibility for having to deal with these reports. But I feel like it's sort of important that there's a way that you, if you see something, say something, you know, like there's a way you could tell the company that there's something going on. I see it in my email. I want to let you know, alert you. And I feel like none of the companies have this type of feature. And then when they do, it like takes you to a 404 page. Like,
Let me ask, Jeremy, have you run across any cases like this?
I know what you're talking about. I've had the same experience. And unfortunately, it's not like there's a law that they have to have a way to do it. It's a nice thing to do. It seems like it's a corporate responsible thing to do. When I've come across stuff like that, and I've experienced the same exact thing that you were talking about, I just send it to like media relations, customer service. Like they have main websites, financial service, like the main website, legal@microsoft.com. That's going to a lawyer somewhere. You've advised them about it, you know, and that is really frustrating that they don't make that easier, because we make it a point. I mean, sometimes we have a contact, but sometimes we don't. We're just reaching out to, are we good? Sometimes, oh, you want his to have here, okay.
Check out an organization called HackerOne. That's exactly what they do.
Oh, great. There you go. But sometimes we just call legal counsel's office, say, hey, we found something bad. You know, they'll take a call from us, but yeah, we have to call, right? Yeah. Make it hard for me to tell you that. I mean, as soon as they get sued one day and they have the liability for it, someone will say, yeah, I can fix it.
My very quick question, going back to what everyone has said before. When I get an alert or something I'm not expecting, my response should be, don't respond, not to that link, don't respond at all.
So, it's a great question. I think the advice is to go back to what Jeremy said. If you get some sort of notice, you don't know at that moment whether that's authentic or not. So make a phone call, reach out another way, have a conversation, and then you at least you have somebody who works for that organization who is talking to you, so you can make the informed decision. Okay?
Yeah, I would add to that, make sure that you don't call the number that they may be giving to you. Look it up independently. You can Google it, call directory assistance, but don't call the number they say, call now.
If I could add one thing to that too, is Also, tell other people. I'm sure we all have like family group messages that we have, and I do that myself, that when I see something that looks like a really good fake, and I feel like that may have gone around to people that I know, I kind of bring that up, take a screenshot, put that into the group chat, and just kind of, make people a little more alert to it as well, so that you can kind of prevent the next person from clicking it too.
Great question. By the way, Judith, who asked the question previously, she's a Silicon Harlemite, and she teaches at public housing, NYCHA, St. Nicholas, right now. Extraordinary, teaching coding in NYCHA housing. We have a question over here. Yes, give her a hand. She's an amazing person. You have a question.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sharon McLaughlin, and I'm a creative director for Mermaid Inc. I own a business here in Harlem. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not really used to talking into microphones. I have sort of a question that might be in the weeds. And thank you so much for being here. I'm learning so much. This is a question for Daniel Rees or any of y'all. What do you think about SSL? Is it worth it, since we're talking about cybersecurity?
The short answer is yes. Depends on what it is that you're looking to encrypt. So the point of SSL is that it encrypts the information that you're sending from one point to another, from your computer to another server on the internet or something like that. SSL should be on pretty much everything. Every communication that goes out over the internet, everything should be encrypted. The good thing, companies like Google and other search providers tend to lessen your visibility on the internet. Your site, if it's not SSL encrypted by default, will actually show up, will actually get lower on your search result list, and that's a good thing. Even if there's nothing sensitive per se being transmitted on your website, if it's just an informational website, it should still be encrypted. It's just good practice, and yeah, everything should be encrypted if it's going over the internet.
So I do a lot of web design and web development as well. So I should just go ahead and all of my client sites, just migrate them all over to SSL? Because I'm sort of in the process of doing that, but I've had some of my clients sort of push back because, their sites...
Let me jump in and tell you that he's not going anywhere. You can speak directly with him. We're the conversation. But we have a question right here, which is great.
Yes, I had a question. I was thinking nowadays phones are becoming more prevalent as we use them more often. And international phones from other countries are coming in as well. And we're using their security systems. How can that affect our homeland security?
Don, you want to start with that?
Yeah, this is a huge fraud issue. I get calls all the time from overseas. Sometimes they're speaking English, sometimes they're speaking an unidentified language. It's a massive fraud. So much of it originates in Eastern European crime organizations who have a long track record of stealing credit card numbers, stealing social security numbers. Some of the data that they take is used to file false income tax returns, for example. That's a huge crime. If you look at the information that's contained in your average medical record on credit applications, there's usually enough information to create a false income tax return. So it's very difficult, to try and combat this. And I think somebody from the DA's office earlier mentioned something about they're trying to prevent these crimes from occurring. That's really what you want to try and do. So, being aware of this as an issue, being aware that you might not want to be disclosing information to somebody over the phone, particularly if you don't know who they are or who they're representing, use caution. I know one of the popular frauds that's going on now is you can get it on your computer or you'll get a call on your cell phone. Hi, we noticed that we're with Microsoft, and we've noticed that there's a virus on your system. And so I got one of these just the other day. So I said, really? I said, that's fascinating. I said, and exactly how do you know this? Are you monitoring my computer? Well, no, we're actually not monitoring your computer. I said, well, okay, why don't you give me your badge number? Do you have a badge number? They can't answer these questions. So, first of all, if it's Microsoft, they're probably not going to reach out to you, right? You know, they're going to reach out to some large corporate organization where they've got multi-million-dollar contracts. But if, you know, if you get one of these calls and you get a cell phone, hopefully you're not going to hang up on somebody you don't know, but I wouldn't even take the call because so many of them, and it's more increasingly prevalent, is that they are associated with fraudulent behaviors.
Could I add something?
I don't know if I answered the question.
I think you did, and we're going to have Ken comment on it too, but your question is a good one because the phones are one of the most vulnerable devices that we're walking with these days.
And I just want to add one thing. You know, the world, in order to address international crime, you have to be smart and change your practices. So one of the things that our office has done is to make sure that we have somebody from the City of London Police working with Jeremy and Liz, someone from the Paris Prosecutor's Office, Singapore Attorney General's Office, many other countries, because something that's happening from abroad to a New York City citizen, resident, visitor, we don't want to let that go. We want to mine that intelligence, we want to understand it, and we want to fight it. So I just want you to know that when you see these things, somebody said it before, say something, say it to them, say it to me from a law enforcement standpoint, because it can then pivot from you to your neighbor, to your sister, to what we went through not so long ago and still is ongoing, where Social Security fraud was happening against young kids, 7 years old, 5 years old. They all have Social Security numbers, and why did the criminals target them? Because for the longest time, those kids aren't checking their credit reports, right? So just know that if you see something, say something, and you've got great minds, technical minds up here that partner with law enforcement to try to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
I would add to that, Clay, if I may.
Go ahead.
Part of the questioner talked about Homeland Security. So yeah, it is a Homeland Security issue because in many of these criminal networks and also in some of the adversary nation states, whenever these crimes occur, there's always the transfer of money. So there's money laundering, there's putting money into different things like terrorist attacks. So some of this money goes into feeding terror. It goes into creating more criminal actions. So nothing really good comes out of these types of phone calls. And yes, I do believe it is a Homeland Security issue, and Homeland Security is addressing it.
So I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then we're going to start wrapping things up and let them get their final remarks. Who do we have next?
Hi, my name is Ishmael, and I currently work at WeWork Harlem on 126th Street. My main question is, how's it going? My main question is, besides universities and City College of New York, I'm actually from City College, small world. Where else are you getting talent from?
Everywhere. So, I mean, to just be specific about it. So, I mean, across the neighborhoods and, partnering through different community-based organizations is one, so locally, and I mean everywhere, particularly because then, like the Moonshot Challenge, we really want to bring in, beyond New York, just globally, almost every single country, and really partnering with them and try to, that $1 million price for the Moonshot Challenge and bring up, what are the solutions for small businesses to counter cyber threats and such. And we've received a ton of applications and ideas from around the world, and we're bringing that here. So when I say everywhere, it's kind of literally everywhere.
Yeah, I would add there's the universities are really committed to cybersecurity, particularly here in New York, from Cornell to City College to NYU, all having built out real schools around cybersecurity. So the pipeline is starting to develop. What we have to do is start getting younger and younger and get more younger people to start seeing this as a career path. So we have to prepare our kids in elementary school and junior high school and high school as well, I believe anyway. Yeah. And you can be a part of that because WeWork has a great opportunity to provide space for things of this nature. So let's talk afterwards.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, actually, WeWork. So you have the WeWork labs now, right? So I mean, my question is, are there kind of cyber focus with WeWork, since you have also a global network, and bringing that in. So really, it's the question of what can we each do into that space. But WeWork's amazing, and you have the WeWork lab. But I think the other aspect on the younger folks, we have the computer science for all, and I'm a real innovation entrepreneurship kind of champion. That's where I've spent all my time, and I've been an entrepreneur myself and all of this. So I mean, I think it's really in this innovation entrepreneurship aspect is really I'm a big champion on, and building these ideas, right? And really being able to leverage from a very young age, and that you're really creating all these different ways to change the world.
Awesome. We have one more question? Okay, right here.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming in. There's a lot of great information you gave out. I'm Lionel Duran, and I just wanted to ask about, with the advent of 5G telecommunications coming in, what do you all see as a positive solution that's within 5G that'll help us all stay more safe?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, every time a new technology is introduced, there's the good side and the bad side, right? There's the risk and the reward. So I was at the AT&T Global Network Operations Center about a week ago, and they do a very interesting job of monitoring attacks that are going on, traffic, all around the world. And I think 5G will give us a lot greater insight into the ability to monitor many of these attacks. And what I would like to see is actually infusing artificial intelligence into 5G to get smarter about trying to predict what those behaviors that we've seen historically are going to look like in the future being anywhere from a minute to some other period of time. But applying that artificial intelligence to it, I think we're going to have the opportunity to do that with 5G that we have not had with 4G.
Maybe to add to, basically 5G has one advantage, that the core network is software-defined network. And this becomes actually much better than current networks. That's a key thing, and it is evolving. And that will allow us to monitor the internal of the network. Remember, all the attacks, I'm talking with someone in China. Well, that person, the call goes through many networks, so it can be intercepted anywhere till it comes to me. So that's why I'm saying the core of the network is software-defined network, and that would be, you will hear the word, this is a lot, it is fundamental in 5G.
And because it's software defined, there would be the ability to apply artificial intelligence software to it.
So true. We have a sort of a 5G trial going on right now, Lionel, on Broadway. So we'll talk more about that. I want to thank you guys for helping me out with the questions, but I'm going to have, thank you very much. I'm going to have the panelists. Weren't they brilliant? I mean, unbelievable. Jeremy, thank you, and thank you very much from the whole office. Awesome. But can you guys do 1 minute, 60 seconds of a parting comment you want to make to this audience? Slightly positive. Let's start with you, Ken Kearns. Give us a positive 1 minute sort of lasting comment.
There are fantastic things happening in this city. We've got the best minds in the city. We are doing everything we can to address the cybersecurity challenges. From my vantage point, you have the private and public sectors working together like no one else. If I was an entrepreneur in this room, I would lean heavily on the brilliant minds in here to protect ourselves and to continue to have our competitive advantage as a city. And then from our office, just a note of gratitude to say thank you for having us be part of the conversation, to listen to you, to learn from you. And I wish you the very best. If you have any questions, please, Liz, Jeremy, or I are always available to you. Thank you to Mr. Williams, Mr. Banks.
I think I've shared a lot of positiveness, no?
You have.
So I think on my end, I think it's that saying that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So I'll just leave it at that, and that, you know, if we can, there's so much that's happening here. There's so many free resources that the city provides. I mean, on the entrepreneurship front, I mean, if a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old can start a business in like 5 days, every single one of us could do that.
Right on, right
every
on.
single one that the challenges that we've met, I definitely know that, you know, it's going to come from New York, the solution. If not here, where else?
I hear you.
After hearing Lauren's comments about I have a 3-year-old son, and I'm going to have to tell him to step it up. We've got great expectations for him, but yeah, really. But you know, having young kids, a 3-year-old and now a 1-year-old, I think that from a positive perspective, all these resources, building that pipeline. I mean, I think that there's obviously we've seen so many great things in our lifetime, and you can only imagine what they're going to see when they're our ages, and how the world's going to change, and that they're going to be the driving force for that. And I think that despite all the kind of negative, scary stuff that's out there, you know, there's a lot more positive. And I think that a lot of people up here are driving that positive change. And, you know, there are resources for if you're a small business and you want to know how to take steps to protect yourselves. Companies like ours and folks up here can help you with that. And, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of good out there.
When I walk into a room at a lot of conferences and sometimes with clients, I often hear the phrase, "Oh, Dr. Doom is in the room." I don't mean to be negative, but
yeah, well, if the shoe fits.
What's that?
Oh, never mind.
I would tell you that the positive thing that I see is organizations and groups like this getting together to discuss this, because this has not always been the case. When you went to a conference or some type of association meeting 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, these problems were happening, but you didn't see small business owners and citizens coming to these meetings. You just didn't see it. So there are two things that are happening. Number one, there are advances in technology that are attempting to keep pace with what the bad guys are doing, and that's a very good thing. Those messages are being communicated through these public-private partnerships that you were just referring to. And the access to a lot of the technologies and the software programs that help mitigate these risks are widely available and either free or very inexpensive. So I see those as very positive developments.
Very good.
Yeah, I guess the same thing really in terms of community together. This is true. 10 years ago, each company was getting hit and keeping it quiet. They don't want to publicize it, but now everybody talks about it. So that's the key thing. The other thing also is we cooperating. This wasn't existing in that industry, in cyberspace, in cybersecurity in the last 10 years or so. So now, I mean, one thing was the Alliance was doing is great because it has so many members, different sectors, talking about problems they face in their companies. This is unheard of, okay? So that's one thing. The other thing also is the government, the city of New York, funded New York City Cyber. This is for all universities in New York City to participate. Columbia, City University of New York, NYU, Cornell. So we're all getting together and talking how we can achieve our purpose. So generally speaking, it is the community work is what is driving the security force to go further.
Awesome, right? Positive, positive, good, brilliant. We've got just one last thing to do. Mr. Williams, would you mind coming up and adjourning this meeting with some closing comments? Give it up for the president of Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Lloyd Williams. He is a handful, but we love him. I'm going to get busted after that, but.
Said a handful. I heard nothing that wasn't positive. I sat in the back and I listened to everything. And sometimes, you know, you're too close to the forest to see the trees. And since I am not even remotely a techie, I listened with a different ear. I heard nothing but positivity because they were giving us information. And that's what we need. I look at the audience and I see from teenagers to senior citizens. I see people from banking to small business. And Ken Kern, I hope that many of you, when you're leaving, grab his card and see if you can find a way to reach out to him, to speak to him, for he to come to your organizations or bring individuals from the DA's office. It's hard to put into context what Cy Vance is doing. You listen to things about how the water supply can be impacted. You listen to how your smartphones or just answering the phones can create a problem. You listen to things about 7-year-old children with Social Security cards being hacked. And you recognize they're saying that that 7-year-old is not going to focus on what's happening with their Social Security number maybe for 20 years and what has happened to them during that period of time. I listened at previous presentations as we talked about, or they spoke about, what happened in Baltimore. Now, we don't have the time to get into it right now, but they shut down Baltimore. And when I asked about that, I found out, Ken helped me, that there were 170 some odd cities in America that had been also shut down in ways that you could never imagine. I remember they spoke specifically about, in Baltimore, the inability of the police department to connect with EMT, the inability of EMT to connect with the hospitals. Can you imagine what's going on there? So there's so much that we need to hear. And so you are in the ambulance, but they can't connect with the hospital you're going to as to whether they can take you, whether they have the equipment. You are calling the police, but you can't reach the police, and you don't know what's going on. This is so incredible, and the people who are most being victimized are the youngest and the oldest, okay? So you're looking at this, and what I'm trying to tell you, as someone who is not as well-versed as the majority of you in this room, we better find out what's going on. So when I listened to the last presentation, how many people in the room really heard anything about what happened in Baltimore? Let me see your hands. Okay, fine. So I'm listening to that, and like Baltimore's another world, you know what I mean? And they said, but wait a minute, the same thing just happened last week in Albany. Okay? A little closer to us. So the point I'm trying to tell you, and not take much more of your time, is this is serious. Okay? So we look at it when we think it's China invading Russia, and we think it's Microsoft and Facebook, but do you understand it's you? It's in your phone? How many of you received these calls? I remember very specifically what they said. So you have a connecting linkage. It's called Clayton Banks, okay? ClaytonBanks.org, okay? And you use it 1,000 times. But all of a sudden you get something that says ClaytonBank.org. And nobody recognized that the S wasn't there. And when you click into that, they got you. And Clayton Banks never knows that they have you. You think you're communicating with Clayton Banks, and you're communicating with Clayton Bank. And that Clayton Bank is in China. Okay? So I'm just trying to tell you what your responsibility is. Your responsibility is to be a communicator. Your responsibility is to understand what's happening with your church, with your sorority, with your grandchildren, with your grandparents, and pass the word. You don't have to be an expert to say, focus on cyber security. So, this is the third of a series. I cannot even begin to tell you how serious this issue is. So you owe it to yourself to give yourself a hand for sitting through this, okay? Please give our speakers and panelists a hand. And Clayton Banks and Silicon Harlem, they're two outstanding persons who've been in this. Stand up, Bruce. Okay? Bruce and Clayton. Since Clayton and I have come together, Clayton has been in Australia, Clayton has been in Panama, Clayton has been in Jamaica, Clayton has been in Africa, all of that because people need to know and are dying to find out. Bruce Lincoln is one of these quiet giants. And Bruce, I don't think you know what you've done and how many people are better off because of what you're doing. They are trying to make sure that our communities, our world, our children, our parents, our grandparents are able to get past the myth, because we have a thing we're doing, and I'll invite you to this. This Tuesday, the 13th upcoming, at the Adam Clayton Powell Jr. State Building from 2:30 to 4:30. Please pay attention to this. It's New York City Senior Citizens Day, and there's a session called Demystifying Technology for the seniors. And we want the seniors to know because it's their prescriptions. You got me? It is their bank accounts. You got me? It is their life savings. So make sure you have seniors come out, but young people come out who can speak to grandma. But what we have found out is his grandma teaching the young people about technology. So take advantage of it. The DA's office, Ken Kern, the partnership with them, City College of New York, LDI, the partnership, and I kept hearing about this fabulous lady from the mayor's office. You've got to meet her, she's so fabulous. Well, an understatement, an understatement. So thank you all so much. Thanks for taking the time, much more to do. The mix and mingle if you can at the back. There's some beverages and cheese and crackers and whatever. You will do me one favor. I'm gonna leave it like this. Percy Sutton, I hope you always remember his name. If you haven't, look it up. One of the most magnificent political, civic leaders and technology. He was talking to Tony Rogers and I about technology and stuff decades ago. We didn't know what the hell he was talking about, okay? But he said this, I want you all to remember and leave you with this. Ken, he said, I was asking him about, what's really happening here? And I want you to remember it. He said, the key word is the word common. Common. And I said, well, Mr. Sutton, what does that mean? He said, well, if you know what you have in common, everybody here right now has something in common. You're here. He said, if you know what you have in common, you will become communal. What does that mean? Everybody here, you are communal because you're in this space. And he said, if you become communal, you will communicate. Okay? And if you communicate, you will have a community. Common, communal, communicate, community. There is a community in this room. Okay? You now have a responsibility to communicate, to be common, and to be communal. I hope you all have a great, great day.